Live.
Hi there. Good morning, good evening to everyone who is joining in. We'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to get online. Yeah, I see people trickling in. That's nice. Looking forward to more people joining. Good morning, Marilyn. Yeah, the chat is open to everyone, so please do participate. It'll be nice to have an exchange of ideas on chat as well. Hi there. Hello. Yeah, it's nice to see some participation in the chat. Well, yeah. Yeah, I think we're all excited about AI. I mean, AI is having its moment, changing lives, changing conversations. It's going to be exciting to talk about some of that today. Hey, Susan from Minneapolis. Hey, Pradeep. I'm liking the energy in this chat. It's quite phenomenal. Let's keep that going through the hour, yeah? Hey, Tim. All right, I think we can get started. We'll have people joining us throughout. So let me officially and formally welcome everyone to this AI Expert webinar series. And thank you so much for joining us today, whatever time it is for you. And we're looking forward to explore the transformative role of AI and simulations in learning and development. And we're going to explore how innovative AI tools are setting new standards in effectiveness and engagement in L&D. I think let's get started. We'll do a quick run through of the agenda before we begin. So we're of course going to get us started quickly with some introductions to EI and to our panelists. And we're then going to do a quick overview of simulations in the industry to set some context. And then we'll get into, we'll deep dive into the conversation with our panelists and talk a lot about AI and simulations. And we have, 10 minutes right at the end to have a, Q&A so that we can address questions that you, put into the chat or the Q&A section. But we're looking forward to this being an interactive session, and I already see that in the chat it's going to be. So a quick, just a quick look at some important information before we proceed. So, you're already chatting in the chat section, but do put in some of your questions in the Q&A session as well. In the questions panel, and we will, of course, answer them in our Q&A and go through as many of those as possible. We will also be sharing a link to this webinar via email as soon as the discussion is concluded today. And keep chatting and sharing your ideas in the chat. We look forward to reading some of that. Apart from this, we will also be sharing some additional resources for everyone. One is our ebook on L&D Trends 2024, and of course, a research brief on the importance of emotional intelligence in the age of AI. Very important, I think. I think we have lots more participants in, so let's get started. Again, thank you for joining us. For those attending for the first time, just a quick introduction. This is an EI Expert Series webinar. At EI, we're experts in crafting emotionally intelligent learning experiences and supporting our customers throughout their digital transformation journey. We have over 3 decades of expertise, and we specialize in designing learning and performance support solutions that boost performance and maximize training ROI and ROE. We have high impact award-winning learning solutions that we design, to drive deeper and more meaningful engagement. We want to, of course, enable upskilling and enhance employee performance, equipping them for tomorrow's challenges, like with AI, and turning training into a strategic business advantage. That is very important to us. And in the L&D industry, we are, of course, acknowledged as a global force in the learning and development sector, with a reach extending over 25 locations worldwide and expertise in more than 26 distinct industry sectors. We have a dedicated global team of over 2,700 professionals that has developed over 2,000 hours of advisory and consulting services and about 1 million hours of transformational learning experiences. With about 450 global awards and recognitions, we are the preferred learning partners to multiple Fortune 500 organizations. And let's now meet our panelists. We'll meet everyone. Please meet Kelly Lake as EI's Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer. Kelly leverages 30 years of e-learning expertise to drive key business initiatives. An industry leader in workforce enablement, global learning transformation, and immersive learning, she's renowned for crafting impactful strategies that optimize ROI for Fortune 1000 companies, resulting in performance and business optimization that enhances our client and their organization's business success. So hello, Kelly, and welcome.
Hello, Rohini. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Next, let's meet Lisa Ellis, a seasoned product leader with over a decade of experience and a master's from Harvard in technology, innovation, and education. She excels in seamlessly blending online and instructor-led classroom settings to revolutionize the way people work and learn at work. As a head of product at Sandler Systems LLC, her commitment to innovation and continuous learning drives her to constantly evolve workplace training and performance solutions. She brings fresh and forward-thinking ideas to the field. So welcome, Kelly. Welcome, Lisa. I'm sorry. And I am Rohini Gupta, your host for the webinar. I am head of content at EI, and I'm currently leading the team that's focused on delivering XR and emerging tech-focused solutions. Across 2 decades in my career, I've been part of the industry in various roles, an instructional designer, a communication specialist, and now an experienced designer. And I'm very interested in seeing how AI can transform how people work, how they learn, and how they communicate with each other. So that's us. And that said, let's deep dive into this fascinating intersection of AI and simulations. We will, of course, discuss how AI simulations are not just reshaping training environments, but are also enhancing learning outcomes through immersive, personalized experiences. Kelly, could you get us started by setting some context and providing an industry overview?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rohini. Appreciate that. And a special thank you for Lisa for joining us today. Lisa is a strategic partner of ours and has been pinnacle in a lot of what we're doing. So welcome again. And thank you, Lisa. I think the people that are participating today will learn a tremendous amount for your presence being here. And I think it's just wonderful that we can come together today. So I thank you so much for that. So where we are today, 2024, simulations, we have been doing simulations quite a long time. And I think the most important point is how simulations have progressed according to where we are from a modern workforce, where we are from business drivers, right? Organizations, different verticals driving, the needs in the industry, also obviously the technology. But if we take a step back and think about where we were like 4 years ago or 5 years ago to where we are current state, it's all around the focus on engagement. The number one thing in the market, everybody's talking, how do we keep everybody engaged? How do we make, simulations, exciting, real life, exactly work, learning in the work of flow and keep that going as a continuity from a strategy perspective. So this slide, you'll get these. It's a little bit overwhelming with the text, but you're going to get this deck, as Rohini had mentioned, because I want this to be able to have talking points for you as well. But if you look at the different types of simulations that have occurred, based upon where we are and where we're going, you'll see the emergence of AR, VR, different types of inputs with that. And then, of course, obviously with the AI component, we'll dig down a little bit more deeply into what does that look like current state, and a lot of lessons learned too, which is fabulous. Not only from our customers across the area, but having Lisa as a resident expert to be able to talk to organizations directly on what's worked well and what's not. But if we think about those different industries, right, those key applications where simulations have evolved, it's expanded. Some of the earliest simulations that we've seen in the market was more around like, aviation or the military. It's expanding beyond that now. We're using a customer service on a day-to-day basis. Across from manufacturing has led as well, but we're seeing more and more being involved into the L&D area within different types of organizations. And that's really based upon the understanding of the evolution of the learner. Now that we have 5 generations and we're looking at different type, what makes the most sense? How do we get the learners to the forefront of experiential learning? And what's helping that too is obviously with the different kinds of headsets that we have, the head mounted devices, not only from that aspect, but we're going beyond using the tracking controls, but we're looking at a room sized approach to VR, which is wonderful. And Rohini actually heads that for our side of the business, which is wonderful. So hopefully we can talk about that a little bit later, but also on the environments, right? Not only from, understanding that the experience is totally submersive, but also from that knowing about the adaptive platforms. So we've talked about adaptive platforms in the past, but now with the new AI, we take it to the next level. What does that development look like? And we redefining what collaborative learning looks like. Before it was just interactivity, but with these different environments, and now with the large scale remote training, or I call it remote learning, is being able to compass that from experiential perspective. So we move into the realm of AI. A lot of organizations don't quite understand where to start with, so we're going to talk about that as well. But if we see the role of AI, which we'll talk about a little bit more, it's the speed, it's the analytics, it's more comprehensive, and it's constantly continuing to improve. So we've gone through quite a realm of looking at where we have been and where we are to understand how do we now drill down that specifically for all of you today, so it makes it more applicable. Where do you start? What are the best practices? So I just wanted to just level set, give you just a little bit of the background, and each point of these points will start to pull out as well. Okay.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I agree completely. AI is going to be, it's going to change the world and change simulations. And of course, augmenting simulations with AI is going to revolutionize L&D. If we can, talk a little bit about even stats, right? With about 72% of companies, I think, witnessing enhanced learner performance and 68% observing increased productivity, the impact is clear, right? AI is going to enrich simulations. AI is going to enrich L&D overall. It's facilitating accelerated skill acquisition, it's shortening time to competency, and it's significantly boosting on-the-job efficiency, making a substantial leap in training effectiveness and business performance overall, right? So Lisa, my question to you is, I mean, this is going to affect organizations globally. So what should organizations know about simulations for the modern workforce? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Kelly, thank you for that lovely, warm introduction as well. And we are so excited to be going down this journey with you guys in terms of figuring out the best way to get these simulations in front of your workforce. Some of the things that we're wrestling with, and Kelly, you mentioned this a little bit, we've got 5 generations in the workforce, and they're all going to respond to different simulations differently. You might have folks who are more familiar with simulations where it's, a role play with a real person. That's their comfort zone. You might have some who are very comfortable working with digital avatars and simulated people because they've been growing up on video games and media that contains that type of engagement. So those are some of the things that we're taking a look at in terms of how do we set up the experience of the simulation for the target audience we are looking for when we're engaging it, and so that it feels familiar, it feels comfortable for them to engage with it, because there's going to be some of that challenge of building comfort with that type of experience for learners because it is so new. that's just one of the big things that I know we're working with, because we are definitely training multiple generations. So a simulation that we create for managers and leaders might be a little bit different than we do for people just entering the workforce.
Yeah. Yeah, AI is going to do that with personalization is something that, that can be introduced so much, right, for multi-generational workforces through AI. Kelly, what are your thoughts? How should global businesses plan for advancement in simulations in the context of, what Lisa just said?
Right. And Lisa hits on some really significant points, right? As we all know that in the roles that what we're doing. From a global perspective, obviously scalability is really important. Not only from I'll take it one step beyond that, but from a geography perspective, the learners where they are, understanding how they're processing, right? So now not only do you have the 5 generations, but you have cultural awareness, right? How are we going to apply this? What's going to work well? Where it might be, if you're working through a simulation and you know you want to do a fully submersive. So we go from that headset mentality from VR to actually saying, well, is it a better rollout to be able to do it from a desktop perspective? Are my learners across the board, how different is it rolling out for Switzerland or Germany, to the UK and even like Spain or the US? What are those different factors that you have to consider? And one of the biggest things is being able to look at the simulations as they hit AI in a very planned, methodical way, because adoption is important. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But understanding a culture, I can't express enough how important that is, but it's also the technology that's available in those areas. It's also the buy-in too from your senior level stakeholders, and it's also in regards to where the business is going in alignment with the business. It might be the business is more proactive in the US, therefore your hands-on, or the verticals as well too. So it's a larger scope. And I would definitely say for organizations looking to do that, start off small, start off methodically, make sure that you're identifying all these different areas, and then test as you go. See the impact, because it's also a constant education back to the learners on how to use these technologies, how realistic it is for them, and also what the outcomes are. So, and I think that global versus uh, specifically to one location expands that, so it's a little bit more holistic and a little bit more hands-on for all the L&D leaders that are with us today, and also partnering with the IT and HR and all the other groups to ensure that you can successfully do that within a time period that's obtainable. That's important too. Scalability, huge.
Huge.
Agree. Lisa, any thoughts on what Kelly just said? Any additional thoughts before we move
Yeah,
on?
I would agree. You have to think about localizing this, and I think she makes a really good point about the technology you're using to deploy the simulations, in terms of, is it something, are you occupying physical space? Is it something that you're expecting remote employees to be handling? And do you have the right bandwidth to, thinking about the processing power you're going to have for packaging all of this AI stuff, um, to make it really work? Because the worst thing that would happen is, you spend all this time, you create this great simulation, somebody's doing it at home on a slow internet connection, and it just freezes out and stalls, and so it's not effective. So those are some of the big things to definitely make sure you're considering as you're thinking about that larger scalable deployment.
Right. But I think the barriers are fewer with simulations, because like Kelly mentioned also, there is no, you don't have to think about headsets. You don't have to think about any kind of wearables. So,
Right.
it's easier to kind of share this with, with a global audience. And I think as the technology also matures, and I think the world generally progresses, access to better internet connections and, better, personal devices is also going to kind of keep improving. So I think, another like 3, 4, 5 years, when the tech is mature, the hardware is also mature, this is going to really work for us.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the cool things I think that, to tie back is, we all went through this major wave of everybody adopting video conferencing and
Right.
everything during the pandemic. And that's actually pushed our ability to launch some of these technologies at scale much faster. So that's, one silver lining of that.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, moving on, we have to keep going because I know we have to be on time. So we'll move on to talking about what we've just been talking about and take that thought further. AI and simulations, and just talk about the kind of engagement it will bring, right? Because AI powered simulations are going to provide more dynamic, more context rich environments where learners can actively apply skills. They can make you can make the experience more relevant, more memorable through real-time feedback. So, this shift towards interactive AI-guided scenarios is the new cutting edge or the bleeding edge of engagement, I would say, that's going to lead to, deeper learning and a workforce that's ready for the complexities of the modern workplace, right? So let's talk to Kelly and Lisa, both about the role of AI in Sims. Kelly, what are your thoughts?
Well, like you said, we have organizations across the world that are already doing this, right? For the whole entire blend of AI-based simulations. And then we have individuals, companies that are just starting, right? So we think about what that role AI means, right? As we go through that. And obviously, everybody has maybe a different terminology or different understanding of what that means for them. And I think the whole entire role of AI, if you look at it, and I'm going to take it from um, more of a L&D perspective than from a business perspective, and then we could talk a little bit more. But obviously, the whole entire, if you sit back and say, as an organization, for us, it may be specifically around the total enhancement experience. Those are the different learning journeys, making it more realistic. That's why we move into it. So that's more of like from the user and ensuring that it's interactive, it's engaging, it's making it more realistic, in the flow of work. Also, with the different approaches for the images that can be used within it, the whole entire approach from generative AI, making it more customizable. When we look at more personalization, those are some benefits that we use. And then also from an organizational perspective, it's the analytics that really give us. I don't know how many times, over the years we're like, we really don't see and look at the ROI on it. We can't really see the return on performance because we don't have the visibility. So a lot of organizations are starting with the analytical side of it, which makes it a little bit easier because you're standardizing it, right? You're looking at, analyzing the performance outcomes and the data so you can match that and adjust your strategic approach in very different ways for your learning strategy. So there's different ways to look at it. From a user perspective, I'm in a complete submerged experience, and now, oh, good, I get instant feedback. How amazing is that? How can I apply that very quickly to what I'm learning so I can assess myself? And it's quicker to get to job performance improvement and productivity by seeing what I'm doing. I have more visibility. AI allows users and learners to see more reflective, right? It becomes more of a, like we call, deeper learning approach on it. But all in all, when we look at this across the board in different areas that AI helps us, I think that there have been lots of conversations with stakeholders about, oh, we're not too sure if we want to go towards that direction. I know Lisa's going to smile on that one.
Mhm.
But the benefits we need, and it's how you're positioning it within the organization to help. If you look at AI and you look at how AI is fed, and you look at it as a positive thing, not a replacement of people, because you
Absolutely.
still need that human factor, because it comes around human, the human centric approach to everything that we do. So we can spin that in a more positive way around what it can do to help, and that's what the role can look like with an organization. I think that sets us in a very positive way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly, I
Yeah.
agree with you. I mean, we should definitely approach it positively. And I think the more we learn to work with AI and see how we can leverage it to best meet our, needs and the learner's needs, that's the way forward, I think. So Lisa, again, your thoughts and reactions to what Kelly said, and of course, what do you think companies should consider when planning to implement, AI powered simulation?
Yeah, and to me, there's two primary ways of kind of getting into this. I think the starting ground would be to use a generative AI to help you write out the simulations, write out the scenarios, do the planning. Because I know from my years doing and building simulations and building those branching scenarios and decision trees, generative AI is going to speed that process up from a writing standpoint, from a consistency standpoint, because you can thread those conversations together and get a really great output from that. So even if you're not able to actually take advantage of having a real-time adaptive simulation, AI can still benefit you and your team as you're building out simulation learning. But I think that Kelly's point on where this is going is having that real time large language model on the back end
Yep.
of your simulation, so that it's adapting in the moment. You don't have, okay, there are 3 possible responses or 3 possible categories of response. We'll branch this way. It is real time adapting to what the learners are inputting. And I think it's just going to make these scenarios so much richer, realer, and the feedback so much better. The closest thing like we've had to this up until recently was, there are all these call recorders that come with you into sales meetings, but you're live fire in front of clients. And then you're getting like the call intelligence, and it wasn't that great at transcribing you. So your feedback on that wasn't the best. And you still had to have machine learning powering that, in terms of a bunch of people had to go in and tell the computer, this was a good one, that was a bad one, this was a good one, that was a bad one, right? And like give it that scale. Where we are now is we can put in the parameters for that, instead of having to run 100, 200 tests to train the system. You can just put in the parameters from the get-go, and it is so close to being accurate. So I think that those are some of the things that are really exciting to see about AI, and how it can impact your ability to implement simulation-based learning, be it, old school branching scenario using AI to help you write it, or actually getting that real-time adaptive flow. So I think that's where we're seeing some really cool stuff happening.
Yeah. So
And if
2
I could
things,
add just
Lisa, I thought you said. Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
No, one thing I just want to say, I said, Lisa, this is really important point that I think that the people on the call should hear. It's with AI, it's how you use it, how you go about what, and the biggest thing on the front end to support everything, Lisa, that you just said was, what does that look like? And we'll talk about what a plan could look like, but it's managing the expectations of understanding what it can do for your organization, and having a very clear cut of what you're going to do in the starting point. Because as you just mentioned, as you start to go through, in order to be successful, right? Because everybody's like trying to figure out how do we do this successfully? Where are the wins? And Lisa, I think that what you just conveyed to everybody is so important, and those complete areas, because you need those wins to understand how to utilize it and then move forward from there. So I think the more best practices that we talk about, at least like the example that you just is going to help everybody. So I appreciate that, your response.
Yeah. And that's some interesting conversation happening in the chat as well. I'm hoping we can get to it later in the Q&A. But like I said, 2 things, Lisa, that you said, which I thought were important. One is, of course, from a building perspective, right? Building solution perspective, it's going to, absolutely speed up that, time to market. And that's wonderful about AI. And the other thing is, of course, the more as an organization, right? The more you feed into that system, the more it learns about you as an organization, and the better the learning experience is going to be for everyone in your organization, right? Because again, the more data you feed, the better the output. So yeah, I think, using it consistently across solutions, teaching it your business, your values also, I think is something that will, be a big plus when building out these solutions. And of course, the more it's learned, the more it's going to improve the solutions it throws out at you as well. So I think those 2 things are very important to discuss and to call out. Any other thoughts before we move on?
One other thing that Lisa and I have been talking about, and as well as with some other customers, is the legality perspective of it. So it always gets raised, right? It sounds great. You're able to program, it's able to learn. You've got this continuous, ongoing, machine learning component of it, which enables you to proactively adjust and move forward. However, then the question keeps reoccurring, is that how legitimate, even though it's human, and it's human factor with everything, because we're the ones programming, we're the ones touching it. So there's going to be existing issues no matter what you're doing. But we're also seeing a tremendous amount of organizations that are embedding more legal counsel, more here's our whole entire guideline for an organization to be completely aware of the restrictions, but staying within guidelines. And, I've been conducting workshops in AI, and I'm seeing more and more of this. Maybe it's not a dedicated resource, but it's having that familiarity with it, but also having those guidelines in place. So Lisa, maybe you can comment a little bit on your perspective on that.
Yeah, and I think definitely work with your organization's legal department, but you've got to think about as if you're using AI to generate content, making sure that you have set the right parameters for where it's pulling that content from, so it's not hallucinating or infringing on copyrighted materials. That's a really big setup for this. So, if you're training on a specific methodology or knowledge base or product line, making sure that the data that you're feeding into it is walled off and secure, and that's very, very important. So I think that that's something that we're all learning, and definitely a bit of a growth opportunity for those of us in the L&D space, because it's a little bit outside of where we've been traditionally, kind of bridging over into that, security, compliance, and legal consideration. I know we're all good about that as we're doing content creation, but when you pull in AI, it adds an extra layer there. So I think that's a good call out, Kelly.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So
Thank you.
I think OpenAI, organizations like OpenAI are already working towards addressing it with, the enterprise licenses, the privacy and some of the settings that you can kind of leverage to not have your chat history enabled and such. Those are helping to keep your, data, to ensure data privacy to a certain extent. But I think that's going to be something that grows and evolves over the years as well. So moving on. We will talk about innovative development approaches in the learning journey, and in that landscape, of course, 81% of employees recognize AI as a productivity booster in their learning journey, because, and we've talked about this a little bit, already, because AI helps you to tailor learning paths. It provides on-demand knowledge resources, like we just talked about, and optimizes time spent on training, allowing employees to focus more on applying new skills to achieve higher efficiency and better outcomes in their professional roles, right? So that's all it's going to help us do. But from an organization perspective, Lisa, what adjustments do you think you need to consider when utilizing AI in simulation?
Yeah. And so Kelly and I were talking about this the other day too, is that, a lot of instructional design follows the ADDIE model, right? And that worked for, you're creating classroom training or stuff that has a longer shelf life. When you're in these adaptive scenarios, moving into rapid prototyping, and this, I would say, even kind of, you go faster into prototype than in the successive approximation model, SAM, as well, for agile development. But getting to a test and what you're testing might look a little bit different, because you're going to be testing how well the learner learns and absorbs that information, but you're also testing how well the AI is performing. And that requires a new type of skill set and new ways of thinking about when you are doing your testing on a simulation. If you're doing prototypes, you're testing two things. You're testing that engagement, the interactivity, and whether or not the learners are actually getting their outcomes that you set for the goal of the simulation. But you're also testing how well that AI is performing and whether or not it's hallucinating, or how good did it adapt to the right challenge level. So that's a new layer in terms of the development that you've got to think about.
Yeah, I agree. Kelly, what do you think? How should organizations adapt? And also, how do you think the learning journey is enhanced, right, with AI simulations? What is it bringing to the table?
Right. So with the learning journey, if you take a step back, and I think it's important what Lisa just said, because it's different, right? So we started talking about the industry, and we were drilling down into the organizational level, down into what looks different. So if I'm sitting back as a learning leader, and I'm like, okay, this sounds great. This sounds like this is the direction I want to go. what did I really need to consider when I go through this, and understanding, we have so many different development types now, and we Addie and Agile and Agile, excuse me, and Sam and all these new ones that we're starting to work with. There's a multiple. There's this huge blend now. So I think that's important, and managing your expectations. And I echo what Lisa said in regards to testing, because you have to pivot. So not only from that perspective, so you have to pivot from, we talk about how experienced do we need, or what do we need to do for our IDs now, not only from, oh, we used to be regular IDs, right? That was great. And then we had to be experiential IDs, and, now we have to be AI IDs. So that constantly changes, because that will, dictate the outcomes of where we are, and, really focusing on those real life experiences. And I think from the learning journey, we're really focusing on on moments that matter, what I would say, from a learner perspective. What is it for, what are those areas, and how are we able to give them real life situations that they're touching, and being able to resonate with, and uh, moving more upon that is the impact. What's the immediate impact to them on my journey? Am I submerged in an atmosphere where what I'm seeing is realistic? Am I able to accomplish the objectives of what we're doing? So it's a spin to how we would usually design, but for the learners themselves, it's all at the point of learning. So if I'm in the middle of going through a simulation, and I'm able to embed myself in a process or in a real life situation with a customer, right? I'm able to problem solve in that moment more aggressively and more successfully than I had without, a little bit more help on looking at this. But it's that point of learning that's important, that gives the power of AI to facilitate and to help my process through this, right? And also from an administrative perspective, how easy is it for that me to? You'll see that with different types of AI embedded, you'll see how quickly learners are able to capture their own data as they move forward. And I think that we need to spend the time, educating ourselves on what those different factors are from a design perspective, from a graphics perspective, in our technology, our platforms that are out there now, because this is working hand in hand with the learning journey. So not only is it as our standard, LXPs with AI embedded into it, but we're looking at coaching platforms. We're looking at, role-playing platforms, right? And this is expanding beyond that. So my learning journey is going to constantly be enhanced, hopefully streamlining it, providing realistic goals for the outcomes, and being able to measure them much more quickly. Therefore, once I'm a successful person going through my learning experience, I'm able then to tie that back to business goals, which then helps learning and development managers to tie that back, and directors back to the organizational goals. So it kind of maps strategically through that. The better the experience, the more productivity out of it, the better it maps to organizational goals, and they're able to reach that more successfully, and the business thrives. So everything is interconnected from that learning journey. That's where you need to start with, right? So I think that immediate impact is the most important factor.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, even what Lisa was talking about, it's, moving from Agile to Agile, but even this, what you, Kelly, just said, is also very Agile process, right? It's going to feed back
Yes.
into each other a lot. And that's, AI is going to enable us to do that much, much faster, right?
Exactly. Think about what Lisa said about the rapid prototyping. Think about the
Yeah.
time that gets saved alone. How long
Yeah.
it used to take us to be able to do this on a very, linear perspective. And now all of a sudden we're able to do that more efficiently, right? We're able to do it in a faster mode. We're able to capture the data a lot quicker and be able to analyze it and turn it around very quickly. So that speed helps us, the accuracy helps us, the being able to manage the content more directly, gives L&D leaders a chance to step up, take a look back, and we're all so busy with multiple hats, 15, 20 hats these days, that we don't get to really spend the time. We're like, well, was it successful? How many people completed it? Do we hit our goals? But it's the quality. I mean, that's one of the biggest things through this process for the learning journey. The quality is there, and I think being able to leverage that is a huge factor.
Yeah, and also the ability to implement feedback that much faster, right? You kind of do that much quicker, and of course, that learning journey improves much faster. Yeah, definite gains, with AI. And I see at this point, the organizations that are going to adopt this, faster, are going to gain, of course, much more. So organizational adoption of AI, I think, is very, very critical. And I think with 4 out of 5 companies prioritizing it within their business strategies, right? Uh, this we see, I mean, you look at that stat and you know that it's reflecting a widespread recognition of the potential of AI to drive innovation, to streamline ops, like we talked about, and to tailor that learner and customer experience, right? Making it an absolute cornerstone for future growth and also key differentiator in the market, I think across the board, right? But with changes like this, obviously, there are, it's a big change. There are always going to be multiple decision makers and stakeholders, for example, senior leadership, also, coming into play. And, you talked about this a little bit earlier, Lisa, right? IT teams, legal teams. How do you think, one can influence stakeholders successfully? All of these decision
Yes.
makers and stakeholders.
Yeah, and this is a great slide to kind of think about your checklist, right? So identify your champions, especially if you're asking for additional investment to set up the infrastructure you need, like a vector store database with your proprietary content in it, so that it can talk to the large language models and the AI simulation. You're going to need to think about who's going to need to make those decisions in my organization. How am I going to identify the champions who are excited about this, who can advocate for your solution? You want to know who's the ultimate decision maker. Who are the people that can say yes when everybody else says no, or no when everybody else says yes? And so those are some of the things. Putting your sales hat on, and I'm not saying that just because I'm at Sandler, but that is one of the things that you would have to do is sell this idea in order to get the funding, get the resources you need to set this up. So thinking about IT, they would need to be involved from any API calls or connections or setting up and maintaining your database. Same with legal, as we talked about earlier, ensuring that you're aware of your policies. How do you protect anything that you're putting in there? And then, the leadership in your organization, getting their buy-in for these simulations of, wouldn't it be better if you're training soft skills or product knowledge and you need somebody to demonstrate that they have it? How much better is a simulation than a simple knowledge test with multiple choice answers, right? And that might be, some leaders might be way more comfortable. They think it's faster and easier. They think simulations are too hard. But with AI, you can get to something so much faster. So as you're building that momentum, as you're doing that stakeholder, I would definitely look for ways to make it real for them quickly, demonstrate it, model it. Even, not necessarily on the content you're trying to train necessarily, but just showing them the art of the possible and giving them a plan to get there. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. So Kelly, from a learning leader's perspective, right? How do you start to build a business case for something like this?
Absolutely. And again, what Lisa said is so pinnacle. But what I would do, let's just break this down a little bit so it's applicable, right? So, and we're doing this with a lot of organizations, starting them off. Okay, what makes the most sense? Because the first thing that you want to know is, where do we start, right? So even you may think that you might be far ahead with your vision or with your but the understanding that it is a blueprint and it is an ever evolving approach to what you need to do, and you'll revisit a plan repeatedly because you want to make sure that it's effective. But in order to do that, you really need to define what we've been talking about. What do you think that role of AI is in your organization? Get a really clear vision on that, because if you don't have a clear vision on it, you're not going to be successful. You might hit some of the expectations, but what are those objectives look like? What are you trying to accomplish by bringing AI in? We were talking earlier about customer service. Maybe is it driving innovation? It might be, improving, if you're in aviation, improving, your pilot qualifications. It's across the board for everything. But once you have that in place and you say, okay, my starting point right now is I'm defining what I think it should be, you're going to vet this. And I will tell you exactly what Lisa said, can't be any more important that once you yourself have to get visibility, you have to get a clear understanding of what's involved with that. And then also, for self-education is make sure that you understand the legality around it. And I go back to that because it's vitally important for self-education. So as we are learning leaders, we have to educate ourselves first, because then you're going to be speaking to everybody else, all your stakeholders, and you have to be able to clearly establish what that looks like, right? So do your due diligence, take the time and do that, take a step back, and then also think about, as you're evolving with your knowledge around AI, we talk about develop AI critical skills, right? What does that look like for your organization? And how do you build out that? There's a whole entire matrix around that. We go back to our competency models and our KPI models, and we say, oh, how outdated are those? And that's for a different time. But as we look at it, we look at organizational, the skills across the organization, because it's when you roll out simulations, you have expectations, right? So you have expectations from everybody that's involved with it. But what is that going to look like? So you need to clearly understand what that's going to be. And again, I'll tie back into the skill sets for the learning teams. Also, it goes across from everything. So we build out one step beyond when we're talking about our stakeholders. We talk about a whole entire adoption framework, which means bringing everybody together from an educational perspective. And once you have this in place yourself, you understand what you want to do, you tie it back to your business goals. Okay, we're trying to achieve X, Y, and Z. You bring that back so it's applicable to those core areas. So you have a clear map of the impact, we're talking everything from HR, talent management, even, when we talk about succession planning and all these different things, skill sets against, employee development, all the way to IT. IT should be your first stop. This is exactly what Lisa was talking about. And then also financially, you need to know what's the impact for the business, what your spend is going to be, and how that's going to go back to your budgets, because that's huge. And there's different ways to looking at this with efficiencies. But then as you're going through this and you're building out, your blueprint, I'll call it that, start asking the right questions. Start taking the time to say, am I looking at this correctly? Do I have this adoption framework in place where I can talk to other leaders that, do some soundboard as far as, do we have the right skill sets for our teams? How much investment do we need to do specifically for those skill sets? What do we understand? Our IT area, is it is everybody on the same page, right? Do we all know what it needs to sustain, to create, to sustain and maintain? And also, are you communicating effectively to your teams, to that framework? Because these are all complete starting, I would say the number one priority is to understand what you want to accomplish with your goals in place. And this is just a starting point. We can post the webinar, we can share, a more detailed plan on best practices and rules out, because we do this quite frequently, but these are starting points. And I know I just actually got done working with an organization, a global organization in insurance. And one of the biggest things, I heard, that's great, we want to do this, we want to roll out, AI simulations, and isn't it the same thing as rolling out? And okay, there's different factors. And if you understand the factors and the input, then the next question becomes, as you're doing your due diligence, is there a successful ROI model, an ROP model, return on performance, that's in place to help you get to where you need to go? And there's a framework that we can definitely share with you. So these are more high level points that we can talk about, but it gives you the level set of the things that you need to start thinking about as you start to move forward or revisit in your strategy to come back and validate.
Right. So Kelly and Lisa, in the context of, talking about stakeholders, and of course, we talked earlier about a multi-generational workforce, right? Which also means that your stakeholders are multi-generational and with varying levels of wariness towards AI. So my question to you is, one is, do you see that, as being problematic, or do you see that as being advantageous, because then you kind of, you explore, you problem solve in different ways? So what, according to you, is, do you think that's a problem, or do you think it's an advantage?
I think in most cases, it's an advantage. Anytime you have diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, it can lead to better outcomes. But I think that it can, anytime there's a new technology, there are going to be the people who think it's the silver bullet, it's going to fix everything. And, you don't want to like, oh, hold on, that's not what I was saying here. Or you might have the skeptics who are a bit more pessimistic to say, no, it's not going to actually change anything, right? So you're going to land somewhere on that spectrum with your stakeholders as you're trying to get buy-in for this. I think the thing to think about is everybody has something that they're looking for, what their personal needs are. and the priority they have for that return on performance that Kelly was talking about. So if you can make that connection between your project to experiment with AI or start, there was a nice comment in the chat of don't boil the AI ocean all at once. Pick one thing, because AI can do lots of things. But if you pick one thing and think about what's that going to do for us, save us time, money, better impact, better output for our learners, more stability. I was thinking, based off of some of the conversations earlier, just, the ability for us to, the shelf life of a training product is short because things change so quickly. A new product feature releases, and then you've got to get everybody updated on that. Well, you write the information that the AI needs to know, and then it goes into your training simulation, right? That's really a shift in that mindset. And so telling that story, and painting that picture of what's possible, but connecting it back to those stakeholders in terms of what their priorities are, I think that's how you can work with that diversity of thinking, from the skeptics all the way to the early adopters who are already on the bleeding edge of things. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Kelly, any thoughts from you?
Oh, Lisa's spot on 100%. I can't even echo that enough, having to deal with this on a continual basis. I think the other thing too, just to think about, with your multi-generation, is the approach when you're putting together like your business plan, how are you going to do this, or even just your high level, we just walk through a blueprint pretty high level. It's to understand how it needs to be presented, right? And how you need to do this, because one size does not fit all when you're dealing obviously with the stakeholders. You have to be very methodic in what you're doing, select it accordingly, and make sure that you can level set with priorities, not only based on, the business units are in, the expectations for the company, but also more specifically to their specific need. So you can tie that back together. It's all about the story you put together. And then it's a matrix that will work if you take your time and do your due diligence to map this out. And that will help you succeed. So excellent point, but great question.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And thanks, Lisa and Kelly, for those wonderful insights. We've had a great discussion, and I think now it's time to move on to some interaction with those those attending, and getting to the Q&A. And Lisa's comment actually about boil the AI ocean is a great segue, because I think Sherilyn brought up, she says, and I'm going to read out her comment, and we can discuss that a little bit. She says AI can help make role plays, scenarios, and simulations better. They can be built faster. As far as instructional design, these learning tasks have always been there. However, most organizations do not provide enough time, money, and resources for L&D to deliver these options. Start small with one project to show the value. Don't try to boil the AI ocean all at once. So Lisa, you addressed you addressed this comment a little bit in, what you were saying. But both, additional thoughts on what Sherilyn talks about here, because these are real, issues we face.
Absolutely. And I know, when generative AI came out, as head of product development, I was coming up with my vision board, the art of the possible. What could we do with AI? And then you've got to really boil it down and say, okay, but where are we going to start? It's small things. In my case, it's figuring out, how do we role play or create this digital avatar to role play with our learners to practice some of the techniques we teach as part of our sales methodology, and then validate that they've got it, because that's our biggest pain from a scalability standpoint. Having our facilitators having to watch people demonstrate and then score on a rubric, very time consuming. And so getting that to be AI simulation based is going to be a big win for a lot of stakeholders for us. So that's where, we picked that narrow lane. Could we be doing other things with AI? Absolutely. And will we? Sure. But we're not there yet, right? And so that's where we're starting things. And I think that's a really wise choice. There was another question that came in on the Q&A about some use cases for AI and simulations. And so I can kind of explain one of the ways that we've been talking about this. We haven't done it live, but Kelly might have some more real examples on this. But the ability for us to have a standard cold call role play scenario for a prospecting salesperson, and they can connect it to their CRM data or feed their CRM data into it, say, I'm meeting with this prospect in a week, and the AI picks up what they know about the prospect, what they know about the company. And so you can actually go in and role play that conversation just like you would with that person, that actual person you're meeting with. And that could be really, really powerful. So Kelly, I don't know if you have anything else to add there in terms of the use cases. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, especially with what you're talking about, Lisa, with the role playing and within so many different verticals. We saw financial services come through. From a sales perspective, it could be in any different model, working with your own customers, working internally. I've seen take place, when we're doing like mid-year reviews or end-of-year reviews. It's review cycle for that. It's recess the whole entire prospect with talent management now being a part of these conversations. We talked about stakeholders, how we're able to do this. So the role playing now, talent management has taken over some of the functionality I've seen in a lot of different organizations from HR. So it just used to be like we're focusing with learning, but now HR and IT and talent management being able to have these role plays, even cascading out for new hire orientation. We're seeing that you're actually able to do scenario setting up, from that, not only from an engineering perspective to manufacturing. So there are so many different areas where it's a realistic, where you can actually integrate within a simulation, whether you're doing 3D characters or whether you're doing, live human, or what I call the virtual human interaction, where you're actually able to interface with it on a more realistic perspective. So we just kicked that off this year to be able to have that. So to embed that and is so vitally important. And we can follow up, Rohini, with these questions too, to be able to give some
Absolutely.
examples and some case studies to
Yeah.
support what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think Satish in the Q&A asked about use cases in BFSI. So I think Lisa, when you talked about customer interaction, that could play out in any kind of power skills and soft skills across industry. We can have application in AI. But are there any specific applications you think in BFSI that we need to talk about?
I'm going to be honest, I don't
that?
know what BFSI
So
BFSI
it's
is.
financial
So,
services.
banking,
So
finance.
There we go.
banking and financial. So a
Okay.
couple different things
Yep.
that we've rolled out, Lisa, just so maybe it will help just to communicate it. So there's
Yeah.
several different things. So we do this with portfolio heads, within, I'll even give you an example. I won't name the financial institution, but being able to work with portfolio heads specifically on their portfolios, dealing with customers. We do role playing in regards to
Yep.
how are you interacting, whether it's boutique, it's retail, or it's wealth management. There's different aspects where you can have that role playing in place that works really, really well, because how often do you get to sit down and actually do the training that's not, okay, let's go through a typical like e-learning, even if it's like level 3, you don't get to have that interactivity to project how the customer is going to respond. If you're in wealth management, you're dealing with high-end customers. Even from the retail side of it, it's really important that you're able to do that, interacting with what's the response back? How do you go through this? Somebody comes in for a mortgage or loan. What is that responsiveness to be able to do that? And we had created role playing around specifically for these different scenarios as too. Even from investment officers within those different areas, being able to understand the level set and the scripting of it is so important, because you constantly have to be updating it. And Lisa, that goes back to your example. How quickly can we get this updated? I'm rolling this out next month. We have changes. We have new regulatory changes that are being pushed out. How quickly we can do that? And it's also from, you can add into the beginning of when you're doing your role playing and simulations, different types of roles, right? So when you log in, you're able to select your role, you're able to go through and navigate, from an AI perspective, or have, your virtual humans where you can talk to selected that. So it becomes compressed within a SCORM package. So it makes it very easily to upload into your LMS or your LXP, to have that contained within it. And then the feedback actually goes back into your whole entire, from there into, if you're doing an HRS system, back into your main, whatever you're using as your main source to be able to do that. So there's multiple different ways that can be packaged and how quickly you can roll out. But the biggest question we get is the maintenance around it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly, Lisa. We have a couple more questions and I'm going to try and get through them. Vlad asked about, I would love to see a demonstration on using AI in the scenarios, including the platform and user experience. Is this something you're planning to do today? Unfortunately, not, Vlad, but please, stay registered and look out for our, next set of webinars. We are going to have one where we demonstrate some of what we've been doing, right, Kelly?
Absolutely. We're going to be
Yeah.
probably targeting that for our next expert series. We will have uh, probably in the beginning, we'll start communicating out demos and everything else in May, and then we're going to have a dedicated series of AI
Absolutely.
expanding beyond simulations. Rohini will actually be a participant, which is fantastic, and we'll also have industry AI experts on with us, along with our innovative team. So we will
Yeah.
communicate out when that's going to happen. Thank you.
Great. I think Satish, that probably answers your question as well, because you talk about, throwing some light on the technology front from development to integration into LMS. Kelly spoke about that a little bit, just earlier on, but we will be addressing some of those concerns in our upcoming webinars. So please stay tuned. We have a couple minutes more. We can take a quick look at what's happening over in the chat. Just gonna quickly, there's some good conversation, that's happening. Let me quickly scroll through. I think Anne asked about, are there any folks, I think that was to the general public, but maybe we can answer this as well. Are there any folks here using AI both on the content design end and on the analytics end of the process? Any thoughts on that? Lisa, Kelly?
Yeah, so we are working on the analytics right now. We haven't rolled it out yet, but we are using AI for content creation. I would say it's content curation is more how we're using it, because we are using it to help refine something that might already exist. We generally are not relying on AI to come up with new strategies or recommend what's best, because again, these large language models predict the next most likely thing. They're not factually correct. So it depends on what you're training, but it can help you consolidate or condense, because I know sometimes that can be the hardest part of what do we leave out because we've written too much or it's too long. And so we are using AI in that context, but we are not using it to generate new content, at least not at this point. Kelly, anything to add there?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot. So it's either one or the other. Majority of organizations from a global perspective have kicked off some sort, like I think the industry stat is like 80% of global organizations are using AI on the back end for analytics for different things, mostly focusing on operations. And I'll wrap this up, Rohini, because I know that we'll follow up with the questions and answers from this. Yeah. But most companies are not approaching it in a duality perspective. It's either usually one or the other. And now we're seeing a lot more organizations focused on the content side of it to streamline, to be able to set up and change the strategy or augment the current strategy. There are a couple larger organizations that have approached it from both ends with different elements within the organization and doing that. There's also a third arm, not only from that aspect, but also from the technology platforms. We're seeing more technology platforms and more of a strategic approach to how we're tying everything together for a unified, plan on how everything is going to work forward. So it's been that way, but now we're seeing more with the education in the market and people being more aware, and also costs not being as high as they had been previously. AI platforms, the costs are definitely, there's more organizations that are producing that out there and more expertise in what we're doing, moving away from a little bit of the LMS and looking at that strategy. So we would be happy to be able to provide a little bit more feedback and answer the questions. Ro, I think we're at the time, so
We're
I
at the
think we
time.
should.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. And like we mentioned, at the start, we will be sharing this recording with everyone along with some resources, which we think will be helpful. And thanks everyone for attending, and have a lovely day. Have the lovely rest of the day or lovely rest of the evening. And thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Kelly, for all of your wonderful insights in this great conversation.
Excellent. Thanks
Thank
to you. I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you both.
All right. Thank you. All right.